Hey San Diego, welcome back to the Apartment Geek Weekly. I'm your host Chris Robinson, and today we're talking about kind of some mindset about owning real estate, and it's the expectations of what it's like to own apartment complexes and invest in what we do, apartments, versus the reality of it. How's it really? How's the real experience versus kind of the expectation going into it, or the psychology. So there's eight kind of bullet points that I want to go through that I think articulate stuff, trends that I see, or maybe not trends, but kind of commonalities where people feel something's going to be a certain way, and then the reality may be different. So I want to start just kind of going right into it. People think that, and this is kind of going deep, and that's what I always try to do on these shows. But people think that their day job, they're going to have to keep doing their day job if they buy apartment buildings and they want to grow a portfolio of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 units. And that's not really the case. So they have to continue working at whatever the career is or profession is for a certain amount of time. But the refinance value add ability and the opportunity that exists through capitalizing on value add, where you can add value to an asset through rent raises or improving the property, and then pulling out equity on a refinance, and then taking that equity and going and buying more properties. So that kind of that rinse and repeat strategy or model is huge in this business, and people think that they're going to have to continue making widgets in their day job, or being a dentist, or a scientist, or a doctor, or attorney, or real estate broker, where you may have to for a number of years to kind of get by. But if you buy real estate and you manage it the right way and you control your profit loss statement the right way, you're going to take advantage of adding value, and then, as I always talk about, refinancing, pulling the equity out, and then you're going to go use that equity to go buy more real estate. That's huge. And people, I don't think, understand that in the big picture. They just think, oh, I got to keep working, and until they're 70 years old or 60 years old. Rent raises that are, people I think go into the business thinking that they can raise rents 3% a year. They think like inflation, which is not 3% this last year, but if you look back decades, the average is maybe 3% for inflation or consumer price index. We call it CPI. That's not the reality. Some years you can crank rents a bunch more. There's gentrification that happens in the community or that submarket. There's a brewery that goes in down the street, or yoga studios or coffee shops, and the area becomes better. Rents can rise a lot more than 3% for certain periods of time. That's a reality. The expectation, I think, is, I'm only going to be raising rents a little bit. So that's one I wanted to mention. Management is a big one. I think this deters a lot of people from getting in the game. Is they think management will be a pain in the butt. I'll have to deal with these tenants. I don't want to do that. This is gonna suck. But the reality is, apartments, once you create some systems and efficiencies and bill pay, and you have some sort of rapport with a plumber, an electrician, a roofer, an HVAC contact. Once you get a Rolodex of contacts and you have systems on how you do things, the business is not that hard. You want to get to a point where you can hire professional management, or some people have in-house management that can handle a lot of the kind of day-to-day things. But the expectation is, oh my gosh, this is going to be a pain in the butt. The reality is it's not that bad. In the beginning, turnovers and advertising and showing units can be a pain. But again, if you create systems and delegate and get people to help where you're not super good at that particular task, that's going to really create some ease as you continue. Principal reduction. This is an interesting one. If you look at your mortgage statement, you have a loan on an apartment complex where you're paying off principal and interest, or interest and principal, I should say. The principal payment in reality is it gets notched down pretty good, and it's almost not an expectation because you don't go into it expecting like I'm going to pay this thing off a bunch in the first 5 years. However, it's one of the things that if you actually look at your mortgage statement and you see, oh, my mortgage this month was 10 grand and 3,000 went to principal, that's pretty cool. That's a forced savings plan. You're paying off, you're getting this kind of hidden benefit or hidden return that's, you're not collecting the principal, but you're paying off a portion of the loan with this holistic loan payment. And that's really cool. And I think it's kind of this surprise, and it's frankly a pleasant surprise when people kind of realize that that wasn't something they expected. It's kind of a hidden little benefit. I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I wanted to bring it out there or put it out there, but cash flow is not always consistent in apartment complexes. If you're pulling most of your profit in draws for yourself or yourself and your investor partners or whatever, there's going to be months that are not going to be consistent. So there's a roof leak, or there's a hot water heater, or there's a slab leak, there's plumbing problems, tenants are claiming COVID hardship, they're not paying their rent. There's going to be months that maybe are less than kind of what you think is your baseline draw. That's okay. It's the reality. Don't expect things to be consistent every single month. I'm going to pull 6 grand from this property or 10 grand or whatever it may be. Things can fluctuate. And that's okay. That's totally normal. When I started buying real estate, I understood because it was in my blood that I was told, and accountants were always telling me, or CPAs, buy real estate because it will help with your taxes. But I didn't really understand the reality is it really, really helps with your taxes. The depreciation, the ability to take your income down through this depreciation is a huge one. And then if you make a property nicer and you put money into it and you expense some of that, then that's going to help. So there's a ton of tax benefits, and I think they're better than what people expect. I'll leave that there. Number, I think we're on 7. People won't. So there's an expectation that if you buy in an area that's a lower income, I always preach on lower income areas, and you don't need to buy in La Jolla or Pacific Beach or OB, but you can go buy in these blue collar workforce housing submarkets. People expect that it's going to be just a pain in the butt. Nobody's going to pay. They're going to have to go chase tenants around every month for their rent. That's not the case. And I think there's a lot of insecure thinking that goes into that in the beginning, with good reason. You know, it's people who are being cautious and being pessimistic, and I totally get that. It's probably smart, frankly. But the reality is, San Diego is an amazing place to live, whether you're in a $20 million house in La Jolla or a $700 studio. The environment and the lifestyle that we have here is amazing. It's one of the best cities on the planet, and people tend to pay their rent. They want to pay their rent. That's the reality. Expectation, a lot of people, oh, I don't want to own in this area because it's just, they're not going to get their rents, or there's they're just not confident that tenants will pay, and that's far from the reality. Last but not least, if I raise rent, so everything gets more expensive. I just had a beer with the owner of Society Brewing here in San Diego the other day, and coffee's going up, and commodities, lumber, everything's becoming more expensive. So when you raise a rent from $1,500 to $1,550 or $1,600, whatever it may be, I think there's a lot of, again, insecure thought that people are going to move out, and the expectation is they're going to get a lot of backlash and this and that. The reality is it's part of life, and rent raises are going to happen, and it's part of kind of owning real estate. You every year you bump the rents up and you kind of keep them closer to market. So expectation is this is going to be really bad. Nobody's going to pay the rent. I'm going to have to evict people, etc. People will move out, I should say. But the reality is people probably will stay in their unit, and even if they complain about the rent increase, they'll go out to the market, to Zillow or Craigslist or whatever they're using, and they'll probably realize that they're getting a pretty fair deal where they're at, especially if you consider, again, going back to the lifestyle and how much tenants and how much we all get from living in San Diego as far as just happiness. So expectations versus the reality, owning real estate's amazing, and most of what I kind of went through here is it's better on the flip side. The reality of this stuff is like very, very good, and I love kind of nudging people into trying to get them into the game. Buy your first apartment complex, get into this, because if they keep going with it and they just follow some of the things that I put out there and preach, then you're going to get to a point, or I always say you get to a point with your day job where you don't have to work anymore unless you want to work. And that's such a cool feeling. So I'll leave it there. Let me know what you think. We've got a cool topic coming up next week. And let me know, or send this to anybody that you want in your network or family or friends that you think may benefit or wants to get into real estate. Reach out to me if you have questions or comments, or anything that you want to hear more about. So be well, and thank you. Bye.